Now we all know that Sork is in a bit of a rough spot, but I'm going to get a build for you that hopefully maintains your AoE damage, gives you nice single target damage, as well as provides a good resource management, and additionally provides nice defensive so you can maintain your HP. What's up, World Streamer? Back in the video, we're checking out all things Diablo 4. Okay, so we'll just jump into the build here, but before we do, if you need help with build management and build planning, as well as comparing different builds, then check out today's video sponsor. Malignants is an insanely intuitive and innovative app that lets you deep dive into an incredible amount of useful tools for all your build creation needs. And this free application, and yes, you heard me right, it is completely free. This app has helped me so much with my build creations and comparing and contrasting different statistics. I was able to find incredibly interesting and different unique builds compared to mine, and even got to try out Crypt's Ultimate Fire Sork. I love being able to glance over at my stat priorities and build priorities just right within the game. And the new highly anticipated build planner is available now to use directly in-app. And this allows me to completely redefine my build and plan out new strategies without having to use any of my precious gold. Again, you can download for free using my link down below. Thank you again to Malignants for sponsoring this video. Okay, so jumping back into it, let's get into the build. I'm going to go over a few things. We're going to go over the discussions and kind of contrasting with gear as well as the spec prioritization. Now let's just jump into the build. Again, I'm going to go over some of the gear stuff. My stats aren't that great on this character, but that's to showcase that you can have this build running without things like resource generation or any of these crazy stats like CDR that you don't need. You can do this as a leveling build. You can also be utilized for early end game and things of that nature. Okay, so first up, we're going to go into Firebolt as well as Frostbolt. The reason why we want to go into both of these is we're not going to be using these on our auto attacks. We're not going to be using these anymore, even for resource generation. But the reason why we want to take both is in case we want to swap out for Frostbolt on bosses. It's definitely a choice there. It's nice to have both, and you might as well. Okay, so next up, once we get these 2 points here, we'll jump right into Ice Shards. We're going to go, obviously, 5 Ice Shards. We'll go into Enhanced Ice Shards and then Destructive Ice Shards. We do have some stuff here in Devastation and Elemental Dominance. However, while you're leveling and sort of kind of getting going before hitting 50, I would not take these until later on. These are some of the last perks that I would take. But putting with 5 here, we'll be able to easily jump down here. We're going to go right into Ice Armor. We're also going to go into Frost Nova. And then from Frost Nova, we're going to go Enhanced Frost Nova and Mystical Frost Nova. We're also going to, for Ice Armor, we're going to jump into an Enhanced Ice Armor. We are going to grab Teleport. I do have an item enchantment here that allows me to have that. We have that on our bar. We also are going to grab Flame Shield. Again, I have this on a gear piece for right now, but we can just swap out some points here if we need to. They're Ice Shards. We have 7 in here, so it's easily taken on the Flame Shield. We're not going to grab the Mystical Flame Shield or anything. I don't think it's utilized that much, and I really didn't feel it with my previous builds. We are going to go into Glass Cannon 3 of 3. We'll also go into Elemental Attunement 3 of 3. However, just like Devastation and these perks up here, I would savor this for later because we're going to focus on trying to get Blizzard right away. We're also going to focus on trying to get some of our passives and our ultimates. Now, jumping down to here, we're going to get to align the elements. We want to get this one right away because this is going to provide great damage reduction against elites. They even buffed this one this patch. It was really, really good last patch, and it's even better now, so we're going to go ahead and grab it. We also will go into Mana Shield. However, this one could be later use. I took this one for nice damage reduction. I do feel like this helps with damage reduction with elites because Sork is really struggling with damage reduction this patch. So we will go into that eventually, if not now. We'll jump down into here. We're going to go 1 into Icy Veil. Then we're going to go 2 of 3 into Cold Front. We are going to skip out on Snap Freeze, although you can take it. I just don't think that lucky hit on Sork is very good, or at least it's just not providing what it can. When we can just chill mobs anyways, we really don't need the lucky hit Snap Freeze. I've kind of noticed that I've been fine playing without it. Honestly, it hasn't provided much for me, I don't think, so we're going to go with that. Now, I do believe that this was the one that you could not take 3 of 3 in, where the tick of chill didn't count on the third one, so you just go 2 of this one. However, if you think it helps, you can go 3 of 3, but I do believe this is the one that you take that no matter what, even if you provide 24% chill, it doesn't give you an extra tick of the chill, so you actually are just better off taking 2 of 3. Now, next up, we obviously want to get our bread and butter, which is Blizzard. This is a must. We're really only going to put 1 perk point in here, and the reason being is Blizzard just doesn't provide damage, but what we're using it for is both the mana cost reduction as well as providing that AoE, and we are going to be using that Blizzard Spikes legendary, so we do want that. And we'll jump into Wizard's Blizzards, the difference being here that we won't take Mage's Blizzard. If you are running into mana problems, then I would take Wizard's Blizzard for now until we get some resource gen gear. I do think this is going to help tremendously. However, we can swap back and forth between this and Mage's Blizzard. This one is up for debate. I do think it's going to help a little bit because it's giving us our core reduction for mana, and people are running out of mana, so I've noticed a lot of resource issues with Sork lately, and so I really do think that Wizard's Blizzard is going to help early on while we don't have resource gear. Now jumping in, we do want to take Inner Flames as well as Devouring Blaze. We'll take 3 of 3 in Devouring Blaze. We just need the 1 there to get the Devouring Blaze. Now this is the biggest change here. I'll go into it in a second, but we'll go into Permafrost 3 of 3. We'll go Icy Touch 3 of 3. We'll go Blizzard Breeze 3 of 3, and then Hoarfrost 3 of 3. These are all really, really good perks. Honestly, I'm going to take all of them. I think they are really, really good to help. We've got mana regen here. We got a bunch of damage for here, so we really do need these. So this is the biggest change here, and this is what I switched out for some points. The Fairy Surge, while downing burning enemies, we increase our mana regeneration by 45% for 3 seconds. I think this helps a ton. It honestly is going to help in nice AoE packs. It's going to give us that nice mana regeneration. Again, we really want to figure out that resource gen with Sorc before we have the gear for it. You're constantly upgrading your gear while leveling, so this, in my opinion, is the go-to. Now, once you do finish out this perk section here, or at least getting enough points to Avalanche while you are leveling, you're going to want to grab that Avalanche passive, as this is going to provide a ton for us. It's going to be great for resource management, and as well as doubling our damage against vulnerable enemies. Really, really good overall, and it's kind of a must for this build, essentially, with Blizzard. Now, going into my character, the stats don't matter as much. Remember, we're switching out gear constantly when we're changing. You really do want to get resource generation, and as well as some other things there. The biggest thing here is just getting damage reduction on your chest piece and at least on your leggings. So you see here, I got a lot of damage reduction stuff here. I think we also have cold resistance. This one's mainly just for the legendary that we have here, but everything else you could kind of see that we have the damage reduction for some stuff. Everything else doesn't matter too much. I got a wand that's not very good. There's a lot of stuff here that doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is that we have the Avalanche Key passive right here for the additional cast, as well as using a cooldown restore, which you can get this in a dungeon located in an imprint, so this one's very easy to find. We also do want Ice Spikes. Ice Spikes is a must for this build. It's going to provide a ton of damage for us, both in low level categories and in the higher levels when we are eventually at the max level. Now, there are a few things like where we can get legendaries to kind of increase our Blizzard Spikes, but honestly the biggest thing is just getting the Blizzard Spikes down, because that's what we really need. Now, because this is my level 51 character, I am going to jump over to my Eternal Realm character to showcase the Paragon board that is completely finished and has been tested on that as well, so that you can kind of see what it works like and kind of what the build works at level 100, even without the hearts or the malignant hearts that we're getting. Now, here is the entire Paragon board laid out. I made a ton of adjustments to this build. I planned this out for several hours working with it. I do think this is going to be the most optimal when we get to level 100, and this is kind of showcased. I am going to have a build planner down below, so you don't have to just kind of look through the video. Essentially, I'm just going to go through some of the glyphs here and what we're picking. So the first step here, we're going to jump in. We are going to take Elementist. You're going to want to level that one up. Our first board is, of course, Icefall. This is going to grant us a ton of barrier protection. You really do want this. We're also going to throw in Exploit here, give us that nice vulnerable damage. Next up here, our next board is Frigid Fate. We're not going to take it. The lucky hit's just not going to provide enough for us, I don't think. And we are going to take Tactician in this one, since we can't get a ton of dexterity, but we can get those multiplicative bonuses with our defensive. Our next board here is Elemental Summoner, and we are going to take in the glyph socket the Flame Feeder, and we are getting a nice 34 dex out of this, so this is going to provide us with 67% to burning damage, and that's really good. Also the direct damage there while dealing damage to burning enemies. Next board, we do have the Burning Instinct, and Burning Instinct does allow us to get, I think, also crit stuff here. And when we come down to the glyph socket here, we are taking Destruction, which gives us that nice 49 out of 25 dex. That is absolutely massive for us. 97% critical strike damage, and they also changed Destruction for Sorcerer, which allows us to get critical strikes from all spells. This doesn't just include your core spell, this also includes your mastery. Before, it was only with the core ability, and so now, luckily and thankfully, they did change this. Coming down here to our last and sixth and final board, we are taking Searing Heat for this, but we're not going to go into it, of course, but we are putting in Control, which gives us a nice 115% control damage, and that's 39 dexterity that allows us to get that. Again, I do think these boards are optimal here. We got a ton of stuff with crowd control, critical strike damage, things of that nature. Again, I'm going to have a link down below to the entire Paragon board so you can kind of follow along and what the new build and board planner is. Now, I do want to showcase that when you are, the play tactic with this build is really to just put down one Blizzard at a time, or one or two essentially. The reason why is because you are gonna be running out of resource quite rapidly, but what you're doing is essentially using cooldowns. So when you do use a Blizzard, you want to make sure that you're spamming your cooldowns. You'll see I'll have some gameplay footage that kind of showcases cooldown usage and when you can use cooldown and to regen that mana, to get that mana back. So when you are utilizing that, again, you can't really spam Blizzard like you used to before, at least not necessarily. And so we'll constantly be using our cooldowns here to get those manas back. And then so essentially you're kind of rapidly trying to use cooldowns. You also want to get your cooldowns really low. We can't, again, spam it like we used to with our older builds, and at least when we had the resource generation. But I just want to make that apparent. A lot of people are having resource management problems. You just want 1 or 2 Blizzards down. You don't need really any more than that. You really want to keep it above that 50 mana mark if you are using that other perk, as well as just because it's mostly providing kind of like AoE chill effect and kind of freezing everything. And so you really only want to do 1 or 2 at a time, and then you want to be spamming your main attack once you're running out of mana. You want to kind of mana management your cooldowns here, and then we can get our mana back. As you can see here, now we have more mana, and we're constantly regenerating the mana there. So you're really just kind of, it's a little bit more management with this one. Not a crazy ton. You still really want to use Blizzard in AoE scenarios. Ice Charge just doesn't feel good like without having some sort of AoE attachment to it. So this is kind of like how to get through that and kind of how to resource manage with this build, so that way you're not constantly running out of mana and you still have the impact of an AoE and the single target. Now, as far as I've been able to test with, the Malignant Hearts for Sorcerer are pretty rough. They're just not exactly providing the type of damage and utility as well as defensive. They're just not that good to have anything. These hearts aren't that good. Wraithful might be okay, although I've seen people experimenting with it and it just doesn't provide, you run out of mana too quickly and it just doesn't really help with anything. However, there are a few general Malignant Hearts that we should look out for and try to kind of store, at least for later game, or even use early on if you, I guess if you really need to. A few of them here, for starters, are more than likely going to be, maybe Cage Heart of the Dark Dance, which does some kind of cool stuff with the resource generation, although because Source doesn't have a lot of life, it's probably not the best choice. This one's definitely really cool and I've seen in use. Haven't come across it yet, but it's really, really good. This Brutal Defense, this Cage Heart of the Revenge, does some really cool stuff with incoming damage suppression, basically explodes, so it's going to give us a ton of damage reduction as well as providing us with damage. This one's really, really good. Definitely should look out for this one. I've seen people do Cage Heart of Determination for the 40% less effective stuff on the resource gen. However, I think it's just way too kind of scenario based. Resource gen is pretty decent, so it is nice to look at that for. I'd probably still take this probably over anything here. Even the stunning, not really going to provide a ton of us. And this, when a crowd control is removed from you, is not too good. So it's still our best bet for utility here in the Devious Heart slot. So we'll go for Cage Heart of Determination there. Now we have a few choices when it comes down to the Wraithful one. These are all really good. Actually, these are all pretty good. The one here that it kind of swaps in and out of the, it kind of cycles through like what a shrine would be. That one's really cool. We also have another one here. Damage over time effects are increased on different targets. We do more damage to unstoppable bosses, take more damage. Another really, really good one for us. This is going to help with Blizzard damage. Also, Cage Heart of the Barber is pretty good too. Critical strikes and all subsequent damage within 2 to 4 seconds absorbed by your target, and then as absorbed, it erupts onto surrounding enemies. This could be really, really good for bosses or high-level elites, although you might be downing enemies a lot faster than the 2 to 4 seconds here. So this one's not the best option in my opinion. I would go for one of these two. But that should about cover for today's build guide and video. If you like and subscribe. And until the next one, deuces.